Now, I'm going to have to keep it down quite a bit today, but hopefully you can hear me. Hopefully that's okay. Anyway, today I'm going to be talking again about just war theory, war ethics, and today we're discussing what is really a ridiculously influential Indian tradition that is seen in the Mahabharata. Now, two disclaimers first off. The first is that I'm going to be unable to do justice to such an influential set of ideas, so I'm going to summarize and paraphrase. And I only record once as well, and I guarantee that at some point I will mispronounce Mahabharata. So apologies in advance, because I know it's going to happen. Anyway, the Mahabharata is an epic, and it's largely concerned with not just religion, but philosophical discourse, and it takes place during the, I think it's the Kurushetra War, meaning, of course, this philosophical pondering is a lot about war. It's about whether to go to war, how to go to war, whether war is justified, and it's a lot of discussion as to whether the harm caused by war can be justified. Now, the Mahabharata talks a lot about what is effectively established in just war theory. The just war theory you're probably more familiar with, that being Aquinas's crystallization or adaptation of Augustine's. It discusses the Mahabharata. This is the idea of absence of cruelty, which I think is a really important concept. It says that basically, I think it's the choice not to use barbed or poison arrows. And this really shows huge advancement in humanity, because it shows consideration of choice for ethics over efficiency. It's the idea of proportionality, partially, and in adding proportionality, it says that one should only use chariots to attack other chariots, that civilians or the unarmed or wounded should never be attacked. And so the idea of proportionality, of not being cruel, of playing on a fair field, is really, really important, and this obviously manifests itself in culture. It also, in trying to build on this idea of personal relationship with the person you're fighting, the idea of humanization of the enemy, is that you should have mercy for those who are captured, that prisoners of war shouldn't just be killed, tortured, cast aside, set to wander the road, that they should be treated with clemency, because again, they're people too. It talks about more than just jus in bello, though. It talks about jus ad bellum, and it basically considers a variation of right intention, that war should be done out of necessity, not rage, not spite, not emotion, not even sort of, I guess, more common good, but the personal good. It promotes the idea of exhausting other options and advances the idea of diplomacy, of solution finding, of agreeing to disagree even, of general reconciliation between many, many parties. And why is this really important? Why is this so revolutionary? Well, it is. And here's why. It's because when we talk about just war theory, up until now, the idea of being ethical in war comes from a blanket statement. The Egyptian idea of Ma'at, the idea that justice, order, harmony should be restored by the pharaoh, for the gods, through the state, and for the state. That's a blanket slogan. The Confucian idea that we should go to war in order to basically depose despots and have right intention in doing so, because the people and higher powers deserve more, and that's what right kings do. We see two blanket statements, which is, in Confucianism, do good because other kings are not, and the other one, which is do good because, bring order to the world and put Egypt in its rightful place. The Mahabharata doesn't just talk about that, it talks about breaking down the individual, personal ethics of war. And what this leads to is, rather than a blanket statement, it leads to a matrix of a sort, and just generally matrices of ethics of war, meaning it's broken down into certain personal, individual ethics of how to behave in war, which is a lot what we see nowadays. There isn't some blanket statement in the Geneva Convention that lays out the entire document as just be nice. It's breaking down individually what you should and shouldn't be able to do in war, and not just on a physical basis, like not using barbed or poisoned arrows, but in treating other people in a personal manner, breaking it down so that there is an individual philosophy, treating the enemy as human. And this is really, really important, particularly as we see Indian empires start to get built, because in developing this, unlike in China or Egypt, where they, I'm not saying quickly abandoned it, but certainly did abandon this idea at some point, the Mahabharata, largely because of religious influence, but also because it's this sort of matrix of ethics, it's stuck around this idea that just war theory isn't just a blanket statement, and therefore, it's quite easy to change a blanket statement, a single, I guess you'd call it, I don't know, as I've said earlier, a single slogan. When a new ruling power comes in, they can easily get rid of this effectively. They can easily proliferate the idea that this isn't correct, and then that's the entire system gone forever. But if you have a complex web of individual ethics that are to be performed in war, not only does that actually encapsulate itself within the zeitgeist of the time and really become the well-built of anybody within the nation that basically experiences it, but it also means that that system is maintained. The ethics are maintained throughout war because everyone wants to act in that manner, because it's beneficial to everyone, and because individual ethics upheld by everyone can't simply be replaced because they're not a single system. It's all an integrated system of ethics, which means that you have a lot more to dismantle if a new ruling regime comes in and says, no, we're not going to do this. I hope this does decently to explain it, but all in all, the Mahabharata, and hey, I haven't pronounced it wrong this entire time, the Mahabharata does really, really well in developing war ethics as not just a single thing, not just allowing it to be more personal, more, I guess, essentially ethical, but it also just adds general just war theory principles that we see later developed around the world. And that's really important within the development of a nation because, as I've said, it gives it longevity and it gives the idea of war a proper ethical grounding. So I'll leave it there. At the end of the day, the message is lots and lots of individual ethical statements are far more difficult to be manipulated when brought together in some sort of an ethical matrix than one big statement which can be changed or just entirely gotten rid of by incoming rulers. So I'll leave it there.